Let's create a simple universal app and deploy it on ZetaChain. A universal app is a contract that you deploy on ZetaChain that can be called from any connected blockchain. And universal apps can also make outgoing calls. It's a very powerful system to build cross-chain applications that can orchestrate complex flows from a single transaction, from a single contract. So let's dive in. First thing we're going to need is ZetaChain CLI. If you don't have it already, just use npm to install ZetaChain. Once you have it installed, you can run ZetaChain new. This just allows you to choose one of our templates to start from. We're going to use the hello template. And now let's open it in a text editor. So first thing you're going to want to do is type yarn to install dependencies and run forge soldier updates to update solidity dependencies. Once this is done, you can open the contracts directory and you'll see a universal.sol contract. It's a very simple contract. It just imports an abstract universal contract, inherits from it, defines an event, and defines an on-call function. So on-call is a special function that gets executed whenever a call is made from a connected blockchain. So let's say there is a user on Ethereum that wants to call your universal app on ZetaChain. They make a transaction on Ethereum. On every connected chain, there is something called gateway. A user calls gateway on Ethereum, which creates a cross-chain transaction that gets propagated to your universal contract on ZetaChain, and on-call gets executed. In this example, on-call is very simple. It just accepts a message, decodes it as string, and emits an event. So let's build this contract first. Use forge. And now we probably want to deploy it. So to deploy, we need an RPC of ZetaChain testnet. Use ZetaChain CLI to query chains. ZetaChain testnet ID is 7001, and we want RPC. So this looks good. Now we are going to use forge create to deploy the contract. The contract is called universal. RPC URL is ZetaChain testnet. I already have private key defined as an environment variable, and we'll tell forge to broadcast this transaction. We've successfully deployed the contract to ZetaChain under this address, and now let's make a call from base. Let me remind myself base chain ID, so I can also use ZetaChain query chains that are connected to ZetaChain, and you can see all the blockchains, and here is base. Just copy the chain ID, and now we're going to use ZetaChain CLI again to make a call from base. So there is an EVM namespace and a call command, which needs a few arguments. One is receiver, which is the contract that we deployed our universal contract to, address. So let's pass the receiver address, chain ID of base, and then we need to define the message. So by default, we're using ABI encoding. So we're going to use types, which is just a string because that is what our contract expects. And values is just going to be Alice. We also need to provide a private key with some tokens on base, and this looks good. So we're making a call on the base network. We're calling the gateway contract, which will then make a cross-chain call to our universal contract. So this is a transaction on base. We can actually open base Explorer and find this transaction here. It's a transaction from our account to the gateway. and can even decode the input. So we see that the receiver is our contract, payload is just encoded string Alice, and we have some additional advanced functions that we're not going to go into. ZetaChain supports revert and abort behavior, which is really important if you're building reliable cross-chain applications. But this is the basics, right? To make a call to your universal contract on ZetaChain, you make a transaction on a connected chain like base, and now we can use the CLI to query the cross-chain transaction by hash. We're passing the same transaction hash, and let's wait for the transaction to be processed. So on every chain, it requires confirmations, a few confirmations before it's processed, and we can see that the transaction has been successfully mined from the base network to ZetaChain testnet with this message. So we can see that this is the transaction hash on ZetaChain. Let's go back. And now we open ZetaScan, which is ZetaChain's Explorer, and find this transaction. We can see that this transaction has been successfully executed and the contract has been called. So we can also see the contract that we've deployed. And yeah, that's how easy it is to get started building on ZetaChain. Is just a single contract, very easy to deploy. You use ZetaChain CLI with all the features bundled, so you can create a contract, you can make a transaction, you can query cross-chain transactions, and much more. Thanks for watching.